Design and learning objects in adult education. Evening classes, Italian situation. In Italy, there have been deep changes in the features of the students attending evening classes. In a way, they are younger because of the presence that is larger and larger of dropouts coming from the morning classes. Contemporarily, the work world has deeply changed along with its request of greater willingness to retraining from the workers. Fewer and fewer certainties, more and more spurs to permanent training as vital dimension. Conclusion. The evening classes operate with student workers searching most of all cultural dignity as well as a certificate that less than ever can guarantee a bright future. Conclusion. Second conclusion. Not the same. Nowadays, more than ever, evening classes can't be an ugly photocopy of the traditional school morning classes, but it must follow specific partners and schemes, different ways of planning, testing, and evaluating on the part of teachers, different relational attitudes between teachers and students as institutions. Even the aforesaid dropouts get aware of that, so they, at the beginning, believe to be in a similar reality and tend to keep the same attitudes that caused their expulsion from the morning class. After a short time, they generally take up a more collaborative approach because they get aware that the learning community they are part of is not willing to waste time. Didactic programming for adults is really different since their learning process has specific features as Knowles, the theorist of andragogy, has clearly defined. If you know andragogy, for Knowles, andragogy is premised on at least 5 crucial assumptions about the characteristics of adult learners that are different from the assumptions about child learners on which traditional pedagogy is premised. So concept, as a person matures himself concept, moves from one of being a dependent personality toward one of being a self-directed human being. Second, experience. As a person matures, he accumulates a growing reservoir of experience that becomes an increasing resource for learning. Third, readiness to learn. As a person matures, his readiness to learn becomes oriented increasingly to the developmental tasks of these social roles. Fourth, orientation to learning. As a person matures, his time perspective changes from one of postponed application of knowledge to immediacy application, and accordingly, his orientation toward learning shifts from one of subject-centeredness to one of problem-centeredness. 5, motivation to learn. As a person matures, the motivation to learn is internal. And now, it's our job planning learning objects for this kind of students. Initial problems. A class may be made up of digital natives and non. That is people who don't have familiarity with the computer. And that is common in the class, the first class, and the second class, biennio, Italian. It's true that informatics has been introduced since the first class. That will gradually improve the present situation. Other problems. Besides the class, the first and the second, biennio, I also teach in the classes triennio, the third, the fourth, and the last class. Specialization, electronics. Here students have a bent for technology, except a few cases of accidental electronic technician. It isn't sure that all students have a computer and, most of all, are provided with the internet. The evening students have little time to devote to didactic activities outside their presence at school and must be really convinced that these other activities can be help in terms of school improvement and acquisition of further skills. And so, to sum up, it is advisable and profitable to work in the perspective of a blended e-learning, alternating stage, it's French, but stage, of synchronous work at school in a computer room in order to train the class to employ the ITIS and avoid the total exclusion of those who can't continue to carry out their task at home, with periods of asynchronous work at home or with the mobile in case it's possible to connect. How to plan our learning objects? Our main aims are arousing in the student a profound approach, ensuring the transfer of information into the long-term memory. A profound approach. That's in contrast to the approach that categorizes the superficial learning, where attention is merely addressed to the next in itself and not to the meaning it transmits in terms of categories of knowledge usable, and where the techniques of memorization are applied, but the role of the learner is effectively passive. In the profound learning, the student has an active role since the text must be studied, not only to stimulate the desire of knowledge, but also to reach a type of comprehension of the terms that can be used in everyday life. Long-term memory is the memory that ensures the storage of information in the future. In order to activate this memory, the information must be meaningful and consequently stimulate deep elaboration. The greater the effort to memorize, the greater the probability of settling this information. Tutorial model. Last general consideration. Writing for a learning object is different from writing for a handbook. In the specific case, I have used the tutorial model that could be compared to a chapter, but unlike the chapter, it results more concise and direct. The rhythm is marked by the slide, and I have also used images and sounds. In the specific instance, I read and comment the first part by using a tablet to intervene with underlining during the learning object, besides introducing both images and videos. I'd like to remind that the tutorial is a classical form of learning object that is similar to the lesson. The first models provide short passages and frequent tests with the continuous questions to check the learning process. Today it's enhanced with various procedures and strategies organized around the nucleus of subject matters. Tutorial task. The tutorial said the following tasks: pointing out an important concept, stimulating curiosity, developing it in a way to stimulate an important profound learning process, organizing the teaching process in a way that at the end of the student has the perception he has material for his own long-term memory. The length must take into consideration the possible fragmentation of the online study. By experience, learning objects that employ images and sounds and are motivating and involving in order to incline the students toward a profound learning. For instance, even if you walk about figures of speech, a subject that is considered a technical and elitist will try to underline their employment, fruitful but undervalued in everyday language. I must acknowledge for experience that adult students feel gratified in acquiring richer and, at the same time, more effective language modules. I remind you that the less younger, in contrast to the younger, still thinks that learning the native language correctly is more important than learn English. As me. That is an adventure for me, even if the larger presence of young students in the evening classes increases the percentage of learners who believe that many of the words that I use in my lesson are known only by me and few intimates. Some useful guidelines regarding the didactic scripting for learning object. Direct style and clarity of ideas. You always need to consider our potential user. Simplicity. That is avoiding using difficult words without explanation or long or hypothetical constructions. Use of examples. Brevity. Employing as few words as possible without running into monotony, dullness. Vigor. Sentences must inform, but most of all attract. Accuracy. Let's remember that it's an initial effort, considerable, but useful as it can be employed forever, over and over. Number 2, besides a suitable fragmentation with an appropriate punctuation, is the length must be reasonable in order to enable learners their use in the workplaces during the break or through mobile. If necessary, you'd better use more learning objects for every subject. The combined use of different media is essential to capture attention. Also, sometimes it can distract the student. For example, one of mine, opening a learning object, regarding lyric poetry, was so fascinated by a video by Benigni who acts Dante that at the beginning she didn't ever realize that the video was introduced by a tutorial. Meta-language, specific instructions are needed in leading the student to channel attention. In conclusion, the author must not only know the subjects, but he must also be aware of the features of his or her students. Really, the job that we have carried out could be divided among 3 figures: the experts of contents, subjects, matters, the designer of these contents and didactic level, instructional content designer, and the facilitator or tutor, who is also an expert of the technical aspects. We are or should be all of them. Thank you. Excuse me. Non è spento. Non è spento. Excuse me for your English, terrible. No. Sì. Allora. And now? Yes, lancio. Sì, però volevo ringraziare.
Ringrazia, chiedi domande e basta.
And now I would thank all for coming to Milano and for coming to our conference. This was a very important moment for the dissemination of our projects, mobile learning and Elo learning. We look forward to future developments in all the countries involved in this exciting field. Thank you for all.